The economic miracle is dead. Germany, once Europe's unstoppable engine, the continent's paymaster, the industrial heartland that rebuilt itself from rubble twice in a single century, is now staring at something it hasn't faced in 70 years: permanent decline. This is not a recession. Recessions end. This is the unraveling of a model that defined European prosperity for generations. For 3 consecutive years, Europe's largest economy has contracted or stagnated. Factories are closing. Volkswagen, a company that has never shut a German plant in its 87-year history, now plans to eliminate 35,000 jobs and slash production by 734,000 vehicles. Ford's Saarlouis plant has already shut down. Bosch, the world's largest auto parts supplier, is cutting thousands. The entire automotive industry that powered Germany's post-war ascent is hemorrhaging. Welcome to the financial system. Control the money, control the history. And remember, simple is never easy. How did the world's third largest economy become the sick man of Europe again? The answer isn't one crisis. It's the collision of 3 financial illusions that Germany's leaders refused to abandon until reality made them irrelevant. To understand what's happening now, you have to go back to 1948. Germany was rubble, cities flattened, infrastructure destroyed, 20% of all housing gone, food rations below survival levels. Every observer expected West Germany to become America's largest welfare case. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Ludwig Erhard, the economy minister, did what no one expected. He lifted price controls, stabilized the currency, cut taxes, and unleashed market competition. The result was the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic miracle. Within a decade, West Germany became an industrial powerhouse. By the 1960s, it was exporting cars, chemicals, and machinery across the globe. The model was simple: manufacture high-quality goods, export aggressively, reinvest in infrastructure and skills. It worked brilliantly for half a century. But every economic miracle hides assumptions, and Germany's assumptions were about to collapse. The first illusion was cheap Russian energy. For decades, Germany bet its industrial future on a simple calculation: Russian gas was cheap, reliable, and abundant. German factories, especially in chemicals, glass, steel, and manufacturing, ran on energy that cost a fraction of what competitors paid elsewhere. In 2021, Russia supplied 55% of Germany's natural gas. Pipelines like Nord Stream connected Germany directly to Siberian fields, bypassing Ukraine and making Berlin and Moscow economically intertwined. Critics warned that this was dangerous. Poland objected, the Baltic states objected, Washington objected. But Germany's business lobby insisted it was purely economic. Energy was cheap, profits were strong. Why risk that for geopolitical concerns? The calculation seemed rational until February 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine and the calculation collapsed overnight. When Russian gas flows stopped, German electricity prices more than doubled. Energy-intensive industries that had thrived for generations suddenly faced impossible costs. BASF, the world's largest chemical company, announced layoffs and shifted operations abroad. Factories that had run for decades closed within months. The cheap energy advantage that defined German industry for a generation vanished in a single year. The second illusion was endless Chinese demand. For 20 years, China was Germany's growth engine. As China industrialized, it needed German machinery, German chemicals, German cars. Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes sold millions of vehicles in Chinese cities. German exports to China tripled in a decade. It seemed like a perpetual growth machine. But China was never just a customer. It was a student. Behind every purchase was a plan: learn the technology, build domestic capacity, and eventually replace the imports. By the 2020s, Chinese companies weren't just competing, they were winning. BYD now sells more electric vehicles globally than any European manufacturer. Chinese EVs are entering European markets at prices German automakers cannot match. The same industrial policy that made China a buyer has now made it a devastating competitor. And here's the trap. Germany's industry was built around the internal combustion engine. Decades of engineering excellence, supply chains, and workforce training, all optimized for a technology that the world is abandoning. The transition to electric vehicles isn't just a product shift. It's the obsolescence of an entire industrial ecosystem, and Germany was slow to see it coming. The third illusion was the debt brake. In 2009, traumatized by the global financial crisis, Germany wrote fiscal austerity into its constitution. The Schuldenbremse, debt brake, limited federal deficits to 0.35% of GDP. States were banned from borrowing entirely. It sounded prudent, it felt responsible, and for years it worked on paper. Germany's debt-to-GDP ratio fell while other European nations struggled, but the cost was hidden. While Germany balanced its books, its infrastructure crumbled. Bridges deteriorated, railways became unreliable, schools aged without renovation. Public investment fell to just 2.1% of GDP, far below the European average. For every euro saved in balanced budgets, Germany lost future productivity. The debt brake became an investment brake. And when crises struck, the pandemic, the energy shock, the industrial collapse, Germany had starved itself of the capacity to respond. The very fiscal discipline it celebrated became a straitjacket. In November 2023, the Constitutional Court struck down a scheme to redirect emergency funds toward climate investment, blowing a €60 billion hole in the budget and triggering a political crisis that collapsed the government. Now look at where Germany stands. Manufacturing production has fallen 10% from pre-pandemic levels. The automotive sector, 20% of industrial output, is in existential crisis. Germany has lost 120,000 manufacturing jobs in a single year. Business surveys showed the worst sentiment since the early 2000s. The Handelsblatt Research Institute has declared this Germany's greatest crisis in post-war history. The irony is brutal. Germany once lectured Southern Europe about fiscal responsibility. During the Greek debt crisis, Berlin demanded austerity, spending cuts, and structural reform. Now, Germany faces the same structural decay it once condemned, only worse because it was self-inflicted. The country that demanded discipline from others couldn't discipline itself to invest in its own future. And here's what makes this a financial story, not just an economic one. The crisis isn't about bad luck or external shocks. It's about choices, decades of choices that prioritized short-term stability over long-term resilience. Germany chose cheap Russian gas over energy independence. It chose Chinese exports over industrial adaptation. It chose balanced budgets over public investment. Each choice seemed rational at the time. Together, they built a system that couldn't survive disruption. This is the pattern that echoes through economic history. The Dutch Empire once dominated global trade until it bet everything on colonial spices and missed the Industrial Revolution. Britain built an empire on manufacturing until it let infrastructure decay while preserving financial privilege. Every economic power eventually faces a moment when the strategies that built its wealth become the chains that drag it down. Germany is facing that moment now. So what's the lesson? It's not that Germany is doomed. Nations can reinvent themselves. Germany did it after 1945. It can do it again. But renewal requires honesty about what went wrong and what going wrong looks like before it becomes irreversible. The lesson is this. Prosperity is not permanent. The systems that create wealth can also destroy it when assumptions fail. And the most dangerous illusion of all is believing that past success guarantees future stability. It doesn't. History proves it never has. Real wealth, for nations and individuals, isn't built on cheap inputs, captured markets, or accounting tricks. It's built on adaptation, investment, and the willingness to sacrifice present comfort for future strength. Germany forgot that, and now it pays the price. History doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. The same pattern, complacency, rigidity, and denial, has brought down empires, industries, and economies throughout the centuries. Germany's story isn't finished, but its warning is already clear. What made you strong can make you weak if you refuse to change before reality forces your hand. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. Its financial system in history leaves clues. I show you where the money leads.